Luz Maria.
Hi, I'm Coach Lisa Frank, and today's we're going to be talking about single parenting.
Some topic.
Yeah,
Ugh.
yeah,
I can tell you I became a single parent after such an ugly divorce, and it just brings so much pain.
yeah. I think that a lot of people, when they, start out having children, except, of course, special circumstances, you never expected, to be raising that child alone.
Oh,
So
no.
that has a certain level of trauma in and of itself.
It is.
Right?
And Lisa, for me, it had this huge level. I was married for over 20 years, 24 years to be exact.
Okay.
And being a psychologist and getting divorced and becoming a single mom, ugh,
Yeah.
it was so humbling.
Yeah.
It was such an experience for me.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, I can imagine, of course, there's no two situations alike. So
No.
I'm not one to say I understand how you feel. But, even for me, like, it had anybody ever told me that, I'd start out having a family and a marriage and end up, raising my son on my own. I had children later, in life, my early 30s. And when the marriage ended, my daughter had just graduated high school and stayed with her dad because her boyfriend lived around the corner. And my son
Oh
came
my
with
God.
me. My son came with me, and he was a teenager in his first year of high school.
How did that impact you, Lisa, when your daughter stayed with dad, especially the female?
Yeah, it was painful because it was a situation where, we were together for 8 years prior to getting married, and then we were married for 20, and so we were together a total of 28 years, right? So, it turned into verbal abuse, and that doesn't mean that I didn't have a part to play in it. Not taking responsibility for anyone's abuse, but I do believe it takes two people to make and break a relationship. And there's some good in him, or I would have never been with him in the first place.
Yes,
right?
I so agree.
So, I never. So I felt you asked how I felt leaving my daughter there,
Yes.
and that was painful. It was very painful. And, I had a great community, a great support system. I was in therapy at the time. And I often, like I had spent years kind of rehearsing the situation and talking about, the problems between us. And one of my friends said, okay, well, you're out of it now and you still talk like you're still in it, because the things that would pull me back in it would be now things that my daughter was experiencing.
So was there a lot of shame around that? Like,
Yeah, there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of shame because my parents were married, and I'm not even going to say happily because he was unfaithful at times.
oh yeah.
I know I wouldn't have been happy with that.
No.
But my parents were married when my mom passed away. I believe it was 62 years. And, and I myself believe in the sanctity of marriage, but the pain and the shame was, I believe that women carried a responsibility. And I felt like, although I had support, I still also, you got to figure, I was with him for more than half my life at that point, right?
Yes.
So there was a lot of relationships tied to that, our relationship. And when you go through that, you're dealing with people who are in pain too, because they no longer see you have the pleasure of experiencing you as a unit anymore, right? So, and sometimes, when you say I had to leave because I could no longer withstand the abuse, and I don't want to be a poor example to my children and make them think that this is okay,
Yes.
right? So, but you still, as a woman, sometimes, most of the time, women feel the responsibility and the weight of not making the relationship withstand.
Yeah.
You
So
know, not being able to
so
withstand
going
it.
from this marriage to this
To single parent,
divorce to
yeah.
a single parent, for me also, Lisa, is it was really painful. It was really painful because there were three kids. My oldest very soon became independent. So yeah, but there were two others. In my second one that I was left with, and they from being in a very well-off financial circumstances for my kids, that they were all of a sudden everything shifted and changed, and having a son who is deaf blind,
Yeah.
and then developing while the divorce is going a kidney disorder. And then on top of that, my son's girlfriend moved in to live with me, who had Asperger's. And then my son, who, after we separated, he was 9 years old. So he became a teenager while this divorce. It was the most horrible experience I have ever lived. And I've had other experiences in my life.
Yeah, because kids have to go to the doctors, they have activities, and now you're running around doing all those things. And I couldn't even imagine having a son who's deaf and blind, and the things, the extra things that you have to do, just to help him.
Yeah, and so
navigate through
he
life.
stayed home with me quite a bit. The courts and the divorce, and sometimes it's kind of hard to talk about. I'm not gonna lie. Being in here with live audience, dealing with, I think, with my two boys and my daughter, in the consequences that the highest hurt I felt with my daughter is that she sided with dad. And even if there was a part of her that realized that mom is in the right, and it's not coming from a place of judgment, just place of circumstances that were showing up. Dad, for the first time, had given her attention like she's never received. Before that, the only attention she had ever gotten was when she got taken to school. And other than that, all of a sudden, she was the center of his attention from dad and the center of attention of his whole family, which she never had.
Right.
So it meant for her to be with me, side with me, is giving up that. Another thing my daughter one day told me is, and this is just breaks my heart, is like, Mom, during this divorce, which was so hard, I lost you, Mom. She says, you weren't that woman before. And how do you explain to my daughter that everything I was dealing with, I could not have that peppy, outgoing woman that I was? And she could not understand it. And she would go with dad, and dad was to Disneyland. So to her, it was like, he's happy. Everything is wonderful over there. So you're the problem. And she had a hard time going on beyond that. And then dealing with my youngest son, like, he became a teenager during this divorce, and he was enjoying like dad, and we've lost our home, which was a huge, beautiful home. And he made me responsible because he was made believe that I was responsible. So where we lived was in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And so going from living in a 5-bedroom pool, basketball, back house, in the well-off community, to moving into the neighborhood where I grew up. Yeah.
I understand. And I think that's one of the things that, women and men, that end up being responsible, single parent, face, that they no longer can afford the things that they could before. Like, we owned a home at the time when we separated, and I left the home. And to lessen the blow, I tried to take as little as possible from the house, especially since I knew my daughter was going to be there. I even gave them the better car. And, the other one was, not, in the best of conditions. But I gave them the better car because I wanted my daughter. She had, just started driving, to be able to get around and, even get to me if she needed to, because I knew what she was in for. And she was mad at me, though. She did blame me And rightfully so in their minds, because when we had disagreements, like I said before, two worlds colliding, coming together. So we all have things modeled to us. So in my household, I was taught, you keep your arguments private and in the bedroom,
Yeah.
or go in the car and go for a ride. And he saw something different. So if we were having a intense discussion, I'll call it, that started in the bedroom. For him, he'd walk out of the bedroom and it would spill over because he's still talking out loud. So he is West Indian. So in their culture, they call it quarreling. And he always saw his grandfather, his stepfather, especially if he was drinking, quarreling, right?
Yeah.
And so when we got into a disagreement, that's what he would do. And of course, when he started that, he wasn't saying positive things about me. And this is in the earshot of our children, right? Yeah. And so they thought I was everything that he was coming out the bedroom saying I was. But I'm not the person. I'm not going to tear you down I'm not going to tear you down at all, because I do believe when it comes to a relationship, my motto is I'm going to leave you better than I found you. And leaving you better than I found you means I'm not going to say a bunch of dirty stuff that's going to hurt you and wound you, because what's the point? If it's over, if it didn't work, it just didn't work, right?
And that's beautiful, Lisa, that was somehow available. It was not available for me,
right,
in my circumstance. Dealing with my two boys again, raising my son Christian. This is one of the hardest thing for me to share. After he was diagnosed and he started the chemotherapy, and we were no longer at our family home, and we moved into the one bedroom. My son, who was deafblind, and his girlfriend had to move to my mother's attic while my son was undergoing chemo. I felt so hurt. I felt responsible. Even if there was a part of me that was not there, like, how do you care for my child that I love so dearly and taking care of his girlfriend in my mother's attic? Yeah. And undergoing chemo, watching the consequences of chemo through another treatment right now, it's just even blanked my mind. Having him put through those treatments, 150 pounds to 200 pounds with the medication, having been criticized by others, and knowing that my kids would be going to their father's family, my son would be criticized, put down, and I couldn't be there to protect them. I couldn't be there to protect my adolescent, and I knew that they were in the jaws of lots of evil. And I knew how they were because I saw them before, and I could not protect my kids. And if there's one thing about me, I am a mama bear. Yeah. I am a mama bear, and not to exercise my role and to hear how when my kids behave and their dad did not protect them, it was terrifying. It was angry. I could not go across the border. I was so angry, Lisa. I was so angry that I knew that if I went across the border, that if I would see their dad, I could react in a way that would not be a good choice for me, right, nor my kids, or anyone.
Now they don't have a father or a mother.
Well, I don't know if it would. I wouldn't go that far. I was not that right. far, but it was still. It was bad enough. It was bad enough to that enough. I said I could not. The injury was so hard to watch my son deal with his health, deal with a divorce, deal with the money, and deal with all the criticism and judgments of everyone. And then on top of that, here I am, a psychologist. The shame. And I didn't know if I wanted to go back to my career.
A wounded healer.
A wounded healer. If she would be able to go back and heal others. Of course, I had to take, my career requires that I cannot do that until I heal myself. Yes. But I didn't know the shame that I had, if what would people would think. But it humbled me. And I became a better at what I do than I ever done. And interesting enough, my career went into the area of intimacy, which is really about love. Because when I talk about sex and
Right.
intimacy, it
Right.
really is about
Right.
connection and love.
Right.
Because I know the impact it made on my kids. I
Right.
know the impact it made on me.
Right.
And
So do you have you know, when you're dealing with intimacy, do you work also with single parents
I do.
who their relationships, you know, have dissolved because of that, but at the same time, even though they're there to, you know, work on their level of getting a better level of intimacy, you're still dealing with the parenting issues, and a big part of that is financial problems, right?
I do. What happens when people, because people know, some people know my story,
Right.
that has actually created a community for me
Right.
in that. So if I have parents, when I work with my clients, and if they say they have a child with disabilities, and I automatically open up and tell them I have one too and what I do. So that becomes like this amazing connection. And then for some, you know, they've asked me if I am married, and I tell them no. And there was a divorce, they automatically say, you know, I don't think you're a good fit for me. And I said, perfect, you know, I'm glad that you're making your choice for you.
Right.
But others feel that because of that, I will be a better collaborator for
Right.
them in their own personal lives. So they just ask me questions, do I believe in marriage? And for me, yeah.
I wish you were around when I was going through. No, for real, I had some really good therapists, but you know, for me in that space of financially, it took so long to recover financially. I mean, we were basically, because I had a car accident and I was recovering from that. So we basically were a one salary home anyway. And then, you know, was looking forward at some point to the time where we can, you know, pool
Yeah.
our resources. But then at that point, you know, the marriage just wasn't working. So now he's dealing with a single salary and I'm dealing with a single on mine. And at the time when I gained employment, it was underemployment. As we discussed in a different episode with Dr. Valerie McCrae, that, you know, this underemployment, like, it's unbelievable how even, you know, and I was at that point, I was a professional because I had already been in the field of addictions for over 18 years. But at the same time, I was still underpaid and underemployed and trying to raise this son. My son was 15 when we left, and my daughter stayed with her dad. Like I said, her boyfriend was around the corner, so she stayed. And I didn't ask for anything because I felt he had one child, I had one child, and, you know, that's being fair. But once my daughter gained full-time employment, then I said, okay, well, I'm going to need some help. And we made an agreement on an amount. And, you know, he was great. He never, you know, didn't. He put it, matter of fact, he put it on automatic transfer to my bank account, you know, so it was never, that was never a problem. But my son was also in boarding school after a while. So he decided he wanted to play basketball. So he'd gone to several boarding schools, and that was difficult because now I'm trying to parent him from a distance and just trying to survive. And now basically, you know, we're having to pay for where he's staying too. So, you know, I just, you know, also feel like, okay, some things happen as a result of our choices when we're in our single parent phase. But I also say that you have to give yourself some grace.
So what was for you, what was the hardest thing that you dealt with for you being as a single mother?
I think it was the financial impact. You know, the financial impact, and, you know, just not having that, you know, person to, well, I don't know that I could say that because our relationship was so tumultuous that I can, and our parenting styles were just on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Wow.
Because, you know, he was West Indian, I'm American. I was traveling on on the bus and the train going from New Jersey to New York, I was ironing clothes and washing clothes and mopping the floor at 9 years old. And one day told my son at 9 to wash the dishes, and that became a whole challenge, right?
Yes.
And, because of our different parenting styles, and I was accused of having kids, to do my dirty work or whatever. So, there was so many differences, and so I can't even say that I had someone who I could see that I saw eye to eye in how to raise the kids. And that's actually, parenting is one of the things that's at the top of the list, besides finances, that does cause a relationship to diminish.
Yeah, and then the consequences for our children, what they're living, because we're not exercising the quality of parenting.
Right, together.
I know. I exercised a lot of quality of parenting when things were in our marriage.
So financially, I would say that was the most difficult. And in talking to other parents, that's, in talking to other parents, a lot of times it's, the hurt feelings that the betrayal, why you moved on, or he moved on, or who's sleeping with who, and who got a boyfriend, who got a girlfriend, and, different things. And the parenting, because, now you have the child together. So my thing is, you got to be careful who you tie yourself to, because for at least 20 years, you're going to have to work together, and it may not be easy. Yeah. But I think that for, a lot of parents that I've spoken to, co-parenting is one of the biggest things.
It really is. I never had an opportunity to co-parent with him. Never did. I tried. Right. I really tried, and he never allowed, because anytime we tried to come to create a conversation,
right,
his conversation is, I'm not going to do anything you tell me to, and I'm not going to take my son anywhere. And so when he's with me, I do whatever I want to do with him. So that's end of story.
Yeah.
So there was nothing to create a conversation, because we couldn't. There was nothing. It wasn't like, this is the behavior. I need you to step up.
The communication broke down, and so I mean, I had the same thing. I see that a lot of families and couples, have gotten to the place where they can co-parent well together. But I didn't have that opportunity either. And it bothered my son a lot, because there was things that he wanted me to ask. And, he was kind of afraid of his temper, too. And there's things he wanted me to get involved in. And I felt like, you're 15, you have a voice. You can, so, like when I was 15, if I wanted money, I went and asked my father. I didn't go to my mom, so my son, but I didn't realize at the time that because of his temper and, things that they witnessed, and I couldn't co-parent with him, because co-parenting requires communication. And for us, the marriage diminished because of verbal abuse. So that his mouth was a weapon. So I had to take the weapon. I had to, separate myself from the weapon. Well, if his mouth is a weapon, how do we communicate to co-parent?
Yeah,
it's not possible, right?
It is. It really is.
So I think I hear that a lot. That that's what a lot of single parents are going through.
Yeah, and then there was due to the stressors that occurred because of it, and the number of years in legal battles and the financial strain. So financial was also a big thing. And I know, I talk with a lot of single women. The frustration is just there's time management, the exhaustion, the high level of exhaustion these women deal with, from getting up in the morning, getting the kids going to school, and then being able to pick them up and then bring them to get them something to dinner. And then you have the neighbor criticizing because they bought them pizza or they bought them something to eat, and then the house is a mess. It's just like so exhausting for.
And it really takes a village. And a lot of times, people are onlooking and in the community and can help. But rather than helping, they rather criticize.
Oh my God,
right?
yeah.
They
It's
rather
so
criticize. And, we want to apologize to our audience because we're talking about the challenges women face, but we do know there are a lot of single men out there
yes.
that are raising their kids. I mean, I can say it. I mean, it's public knowledge that my pastor, his wife passed away when his 3 children were teens, and he had to raise those kids by himself. So it's not just women; it's
No.
men too.
Yeah, men too. Men deal with that.
Yeah,
My
seeing
brother,
it more and more.
yeah, my brother also was really involved after the divorce with his kids, and they kind of stayed a great portion of the time with him as well.
Right.
So he did do a lot of co-parenting and, just the whole thing, conversation regarding men. They are getting more involved with their children. Maybe it wasn't for me. I mean, it totally was not at all for me. I mean, in court, we dealt 10 years of legal battles, but when it came to our kids' decision about who takes care of them, I said, I'm willing to take care of my kids. In 2 hours, we were done. We signed off all the papers.
You can have them.
You can have them.
Go for it.
You just go for it out, so it was quick.
But then you have those other situations where there is a battle, because my daughter went through that. Her husband left when their daughter was 9 months old,
Yeah.
right? And they were pulling her back and forth, and now she has some separation anxieties when she goes away from her mother, little by little, growing out of it. But she's 7, and that lasted a long time because of that whole attachment issue that happens within the first 2 years of a child's development with their mother, right?
Yes.
So she has an anxious attachment style, and they were back and forth in court. So, there were some things with him, his family, that he lived with them that, my daughter was very concerned about. But the judge, they try to be more fair now, and unless you can prove that the father is putting that child in some kind of serious danger, they don't want to hear it. And so she had to go every other weekend with him, and then they went back. He took her back to court, and he started getting Wednesday nights. But, a lot of that was his mother was involved, and she lived with me. So, she didn't live with me. We shared a home. And, so it was a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of back and forth and fighting over the child and, and all of that. And that's challenging.
It really is
challenging. To be away from your child with people that you don't trust, that the father's around and you don't even trust him.
Yeah,
or the other person, I should say.
Yeah, and also the financial constraints with the dads. I know the finances, how it impacts them, especially when they're trying to regain a new relationship. And you actually see the impact, like I see it in my clients, where it's really hard for them to date and build a relationship or even a marriage because of their fear of the catastrophe of the financial resources that they divided and the resources. So they don't want to have to do that anymore.
Right.
And it is a true impact. It is
they
a
say
impact.
They say it's cheaper to keep her. So most of the time, if it's a woman, she gonna get half. But and then I'd also like to mention that my heart does go out for the fathers that have to pay child support, because a lot of times it is exorbitant and and everything's so expensive for everybody.
But and it's the whole system. It's really, we really have to create strategies in a way so that both the mother, the children, and the father are able to resolve. And part of it too is just this world, this country, the system. This world is so expensive. It's just expensive.
And I know in my culture, I know we're wrapping things up, but in my culture, I recall years ago, when my sister was on public assistance, and years ago, public assistance was really designed to separate the family. Slavery, they separated the family in our culture, right? And years ago, when public assistance first began, they would come to your house and check to see if there were any men's shoes or clothes
Yeah.
and things like that, because they wanted to make sure
That you were being paid as a single mother.
Yeah. But now it's so many, because of technology, it's easy for them to find but I learned the Social Security as soon as I got started.
Yeah, and again, the truth of it is we really forget what the focus is, which is our children. We make the choice to bring these children to this world, and it is their future, and the anger and the issues and the system itself, the way it's set up, contribute to all of this. So sometimes we take all of the contribution that's outside in the world, outside in the system, and just dump it into the other person. And how does one restart? How does one regain ourselves, our lives, So it really is. So we got one more minute to wrap up, Lisa.
So we just want to encourage, anyone facing a situation where you are a single parent, and to, just encourage you to get the support that you need, in whatever area it is. If you want to be successful at something, sit with somebody who succeeded and someone who failed, right?
Yes.
And just know that, okay, both our children are adults now. And of course, you always, from season to season, you may deal with some of the hurt. It may come up, right? But this too shall pass. They're not going to be small always. You'll make it through. And this has been another episode, great episode of
Different Voices.